Hi everybody, it's Ade Shukwe from Agile TV at the Agile Development Conference West 2012, Las Vegas. And right now I'm honored to be with Alan Shalloway. Good afternoon, Alan.
Good afternoon.
Hi. And so Alan gave a great talk earlier on about enterprise agility, and we're just going to have a quick catch up and just ask a few questions and hopefully it'll provide value to you. So just for those who are watching who might not know who you are, can you just give a little bit about your background?
Sure. I'm CEO of NetObjectives. We're primarily in Seattle. We do work around the world, and our main business is actually transforming organizations that have a software development component, either IT or product development. I myself work at the corporate level, doing Lean, Scrum, Kanban, even patterns, because my background is more technical. Okay. But once we formed NetObjectives, it became very clear that the problem is usually more at a higher level in the organization. So though I focus mostly on process, I'm actually pretty heavily technical as well with patterns, and other people do TDD and ATDD and things like that. So we kind of take the holistic view of everything, both different skills and throughout the organization. And I do a lot of training, a lot of coaching, and just a lot of talking.
Okay, so I know you're speaking about enterprise agility, so there might be some people watching this right now and not fully understanding, because for a lot of people's understanding of Agile is it's a software development process, but naturally it can be applied to many other things. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more? Yeah,
what you're really trying to do is add value to the business. So part of that is how do you actually figure out what you should be working on? And a lot of that has nothing to do with software. That has to do with analyzing your customers, analyzing your business strategy, getting clear upon what should we be building, and how do you actually manage or figure out which of the many multitudes of things you might possibly do, which ones you do. Well, these are all before it's hit the software development side. This is actually a business aspect. So we call what we do business-driven software development. First, what is the important, how do you identify where the value truly is? Then how do you decide how to manage it, giving it to the teams? And then how do the teams work on it across the teams? How do they collaborate? So value is much more than the software piece. It's the discovery of what we should build. It's also how do I deploy it? How does the customer consume it? It's this whole aspect of things. If you have a team, in fact, it might be hard to believe, but we find some companies where they like doing XP and their teams can actually build stuff really fast. And they're actually ahead of the business game. And some of the problems there is not at the development team at all, but it's how do I actually figure out what's truly of value, not just have the teams be building stuff. So there's this issue of what's important, how do we build it, how do we give it to the teams, and then how do the teams do it? Now, most of the time, the development area is problematic, has some issues to it. So people tend to focus in the Agile world on fixing the teams. But the team is like your engine in your car. Very, very important, but only a component. You have the transmission, you have the driver, you have the steering, you have the brakes. So software development is a component of delivering business value. And you really need to look at that whole piece.
Okay. So what can have you got any suggestions on strategies or ways development teams who might be doing Agile but kind of feel isolated from the business, how do you now kind of take the principles and values that an Agile development team are using and now kind of transfer that across the organization?
Well, you have to, first of all, get clear on who's driving and who needs to be kind of enrolled, per se. So if, say you're a developer, or say you're a director of development, so you're someone in the organization, sometimes the business wants to be involved and sometimes they don't want to be involved. But the first thing you have to look at is you're going to have to talk to them from their perspective. So what do business people want? Well, you know what? There's this really old concept called time to market, and they want quick time to market. I mean, this is not new. In the lean space, we call that cycle time, when I got the idea until it gets delivered, but it's an old concept. So the question is, how can you get value delivered quicker? That's really what Agile will provide you, the possibility. Agile talks about building like a minimum marketable feature, the smallest piece you can that'll add value. The teams like doing Scrum might take a chunk of it and every 2 weeks build something and get feedback and deliver it. But you don't want to talk about it mechanistically. Like, I'm not a car buff. So if somebody talks to me about how many RPMs and what the pressure is and torque and stuff like that, I don't know. I want to know how many seconds does it take me to get up to 60? What's the miles per gallon? I want the results explained. Can I stop safely? So in the business world, they don't really care iterations. They don't care Scrum. They don't care Kanban. They want to know, what can I reasonably expect from you guys in terms of, if I give you this, how long will it take me to get it delivered? How much can I get? How much business value? What's the quality? So talk from business value, quality, time, and delivery, things of that nature, and enroll them in it. And then they have to understand how their work actually impacts the development team. We all have had the experience of being overwhelmed, working on 4 or 5 projects at once, and everything slows down. Now, why does that happen? Well, that's just human nature. Humans cannot work on multiple things, and when they task switch like that, they become less effective. Now, who's causing that to happen? Actually, not the development team, managers or the business stakeholders who are putting all this workload on the development team. So they need to somehow show to the stakeholders, the business guys, the executive guys, that if you don't do a good job of prioritization, if you have me work on everything at once because you're not going to take the time to really see what's necessary, then that's going to slow everything down and your quality will go down. So we want to not only tell them what they want, but we have to tell them how their actions adversely or positively affect us. So we can start coaching them, in a sense, by speaking their language on how to give us things we need to get our job done. And the beauty of it is that what that really means is they're going to focus on what they need the most. What are the most important features? What are the smallest pieces of that? And let's get that done, and then let's get the next thing done, and then let's get the next thing done, instead of doing everything at once. So the beauty of Lean, in my opinion, is it can not only create a vision for everybody, but when people start working on their own aspect of it to their benefit, actually you get synergy, and even though, and you can get an optimization of the whole thing. In other words, it's in the development organization to be working on the right workload. It's in the management or stakeholders' advantage to be focusing on the most important things. Those two things start working together to improve people working on the right things at the right time and improving quality, which then offsets sometimes what's called failure demand, when bad things happen because our quality was low. Well, failure demand is just a waste of time. So by doing it in the right cycle, at the right workload, you improve quality, you can get more done. See, we want to turn this into an upward spiral of getting stuff done instead of this overloaded spiral. So how do we do this? Is you look at time, you look at flow, you look at blockages, and really my experience is when you focus this way and say it this way, business stakeholders are smart people. They can understand that blockages of time are not good because that delays time to market. They can understand that working on too many things is not good because they're human beings and they've had that experience, so they can understand. Most of these problems are actually how people work. So you have to look and include the psychology and the way people work. And as long as you're all talking and communicating together, you can actually solve these problems pretty well, I think.
Okay. What I'm picking up from some of the things that you're saying and what you spoke about earlier on is, whereas before some in the community have seen Lean as being separate from Agile, and others have potentially seen that it could be kind of the same but not bringing them together, is it a case that under Lean Agile we're now recognizing that in order for us to be more agile, it's also about us looking at kind of removing the waste in the process, making things flow a lot better, and seeing that it's two sides of the same coin, and if you have the two of them you get a much more valuable coin?
It's sort of like that, but I'm not sure it's exactly like that.
Okay.
But I think that's not a bad way to start out with it. See, to me, Agile from its history has been focused somewhat on the team. Extreme programming was a very team-centric. Scrum in particular is a team-based. Now there are ways people have tried scaling Scrum. And there are, so in some sense you could think of like Agile historically has been a good way to create teams that are effective. It was interesting in my talk today, I asked how many people were doing some form of Agile, and I had people raise their hands, and about 80% of the people raised their hands. I said, keep your hands up, how many of you are having success at the team level? And about 80% of those people kept their hands up. And then I said, how many of you are having success at the enterprise level? And 80% of the people put their hands down. Actually, almost everybody did. So why is that it works at one level? See, Agile is effective, but it's been mostly working effectively at the team level. So Lean provides a context or a bigger picture view that Agile can work across the enterprise. So you need them both, but they're not quite two different sides of the same coin, because if you ask me, and a lot of people will disagree, but if you ask me, I would say Lean is more senior, because Lean says, look, let's look at the big picture and then figure out how to do the pieces, as opposed to let's do the pieces and then try to use Lean flow to tie it together. See, Lean is a bigger picture thing. It says optimize the whole, take an holistic view, look at cycle time, So that is the primary thing we look at, is the big picture. And then we figure out how to do it with Agile. That's my view. That's why we call it Lean-Agile, not Agile Lean. Now, there are a lot of people who are taking good practices and principles from Lean and injecting it into Agile, like work in progress, explicit policies. These are all great. If you're doing Scrum and you start putting that in your Scrum will get better. But that's still a team approach now with Lean in it, as opposed to using Lean across the enterprise and then doing Agile to implement it.
Okay, cool. So coming to the end of the interview right about now. So my question to you is, where do you see Agile, Lean Agile, going over the next few years?
Well, I think we're at a crossing point now. I actually think that people are recognizing that really improving the bottom line of the organization is what's going to have sustainability and better social outcomes for people. In other words, we want teams, the people working, to have a lifestyle that is sustainable. We don't want them to have products going out by working overtime and things like that. So we're starting to see that looking at the bigger picture is useful for the sustainability and more effective teams. So with this awareness, I think we're seeing, and with the, like I said, the 80% doing Agile, 80% doing Agile effectively at the team, but 80% not doing it effectively at the enterprise, is making people aware that they need something else. And management is getting more involved now. Even though they still sometimes feel a little left out in the Agile community, it's coming back in the Lean and Kanban movement quite a lot. So I think what you're going to see is more of this holistic enterprise view. You're going to see an expansion, and you're going to see more people taking a bigger picture view, but recognizing it's not about micromanagement, it's not about saying this process across the board, but it's about creating a better vision of results. It's also about acknowledging that there are rules that you have to follow. Well, I've talked about this. In other words, if I do something now and there's a blockage and a long time of delay, that will cause additional work. That's not my opinion, that's not your opinion. You can demonstrate that. That's like gravity. Gravity's nobody's opinion. It's something we can say works. Well, I think what's starting to be recognized, and this is a big shift, is that there are things we must attend to. And as we build that base of knowledge, we'll be more effective. So I think it's this trend to holistic enterprise, recognizing rules, becoming more explicit, creating visibility. I think it's actually an exciting time. I think we're going to see a lot of progress as we've kind of crossed the chasm. We're now in still the early adoption phase to some level, but it's getting more widespread.
Alan, really appreciate your time and for sharing all that information with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.